You know, in these uncertain financial times, people feel paralyzed by fear, anxiety, and stress. And during this time, people are making a lot of decisions in terms of their money. In this video, I'm going to talk about the key money mistakes that people make in this time and how to avoid them. You're going to learn how to be unshakable and have peace of mind in this world of uncertainty. In fact, I've learned so many lessons from this book, Unshakeable by Tony Robbins, that I'd love to share with you. First, let's start with a quote by Benjamin Graham, the author of The Intelligent Investor. He says, "The investor's chief problem, and even his worst enemy, is likely to be himself." You know, that means that the single most financial threat that you have is yourself. Think about that for a minute. Let that settle in. The inverse is also true, that you are the one with the power. Because if you're the single most threat to your financial well-being, you're also the hero of your financial well-being. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this, but I will say that I've learned that in order to be successful and to manage our finances well, it's actually 80% psychology and just 20% mechanics. You know, I used to be intimidated by all of things personal finance and investing because they didn't teach that to me in school. They don't teach that to anyone in school. We have to learn it on our own, and it's so intimidating because there's so much information. But yeah, it really is 20% mechanics. And most of the heavy lifting really is in the psychology of it all. And we're gonna spend some time talking about that. The key mistake that investors make in these times is negativity and loss aversion. You see, when we see that market go down, okay, and we take a look at our investments, our hard-earned money that we worked years to acquire, and we see that plummet, that's going to cause a lot of emotional pain. And what happens is, more times than not, investors make their decisions based on that fear. But the solution is to understand market patterns and be prepared for market patterns. So let's talk about the first point a little bit here, understanding market patterns. You know, corrections have occurred on average about once a year since the 1900s. And bear markets, what we're experiencing now, have occurred once every 3 to 5 years. And so there's a pattern going on. And the best investors understand these patterns. And that helps them override this natural tendency to be fearful. I'm not saying that there's not going to be any fear. Yes, there is going to be fear. But it's going to help them have that leverage and have that mental and emotional stability to make better decisions, more objective decisions, if that makes sense. They understand that, yes, there are risks to bear markets. I'm not making light of the situation, but they do see the silver lining, okay? And they realize that, wait a second, that's when things go on sale. And they're able to snap up great bargains at this time. And who doesn't like a good sale, right? And so I'm not trying to make light of the situation here because I've definitely been affected just as much as everyone else. But I will say that now is a good time to acquire a different paradigm. It's a paradigm shift. It's a shift that helps us attempt to see this as an opportunity to build long-term wealth and put our fear aside. The second point that I wanted to make was be prepared for these market patterns. So what do I mean by being prepared? Well, you're going to want to be prepared both psychologically and by having the right asset allocations. On that first point, you want to be self-aware, okay? Be aware of your emotional tendencies. Are you caught up in this polarizing negativity and fear that's coming up on a lot of these news feeds regarding the market? Well, if you're caught up in this, okay, emotionally, and you're fearful, then now's the time, if you haven't already, to take in more priority in educating yourself about bear markets. And it means investing in yourself. So you've invested in the market, good for you. Now it's time to invest in yourself, okay? Invest in your education on financials, on the stock market, on these cycles, on these patterns. And that's really going to arm you with the information so that you're not vulnerable to all of this volatility of information that's going around that can easily knock you off your feet and make you make decisions based on this fear. So what you want to do is be that calm in the middle of the storm. Okay, you're not out of the storm. You're in. Where is the calm? And it's right in the middle. It's in the eye of the storm. So you're in the middle of the storm. Okay, you're not outside of it, but you have this calmness because you're more aware. Okay, not only are you self-aware because you know your natural tendencies, but you're also aware of the environment that you're in right now. Okay, and that's really going to support you to make great decisions. And one point I wanted to make here is a lot of times as investors, we'll rely on others to make the decisions for us, right? So we'll rely on our financial investor as our guru, okay, that knows everything, or we'll rely on a spouse, or rely on a smart uncle or aunt, or we'll rely on other sources because we're trying to fill in a gap that we don't have ourselves, okay? So it's very important for you to take your power back. Why? Because it's your money. It's your money, so you are responsible and accountable for your financial education. If there's any area that you don't know of, then by all means, take this time to educate yourself, okay? And so that is a good segue into diversifying our asset allocation, because what happens a lot of times is something called, that Tony mentions in the book, is confirmation bias. And confirmation bias is this human tendency to look at information that confirms our own beliefs and our own bias and our own perspectives of things. Now, for investors, confirmation bias is dangerous because essentially that leads you to putting all your eggs in one basket. For example, I'm an IT person, right? I work as a cybersecurity project manager. So what types of investments am I more interested in? Well, yeah, the technical investments. I'm going to do a lot more research in those areas because guess what? I'm interested. Okay, I'm also interested in real estate personally. I've invested there, and so I'll kind of be more biased towards that. So the news feeds and everything I read about just kind of talks more about that. I will say that I'm not as interested in other types of areas, okay? And that is the danger. So I've had to force myself to diversify my knowledge, my breadth. So I've got the depth of knowledge here, but the breadth of knowledge, the expanded understanding is lacking on the other areas. That's where I need to spend a little more time on educating myself and speaking to qualified people that can give me some honest opinions or read other books on the other areas of investing so that I'm able to have the education that I need to be able to diversify my asset allocation. So if anything happens with the stocks in this area, or real estate or technical, that I have a buffer here and that I'm sheltered because I've been able to diversify my portfolio. Ultimately, that's really going to help us to be prepared for market patterns, because now we're educated, we are certain, we understand these market patterns, and now we're prepared with these market patterns because we've diversified our asset allocation and now are sheltered no matter which way the market goes. So in conclusion, you accelerate your journey to success when you apply the principles of successful investors and you study market patterns. You know, money gives us a sense of freedom, security, comfort, and that joy that comes when you're able to give it away to charity and help others as well. In fact, the Book of Wisdom says, "For wisdom is protection, just as money is protection." So we all want to learn to be good stewards of our money. Remember, being unshakable is having peace of mind and having confidence when we educate ourselves in investing and we become that calm in the midst of the storm. So what are your financial goals? Do you have goals that are clearly written down and articulate where you see yourself in your financial future? Do you want to be financially free? If so, then what are the steps you're going to take to get there? Well, I've created a goal creation masterclass. I call it my goal mastery program, and that's really going to support you to be able to establish some solid goals and an action plan to support it. Click on the link below so that you can go ahead and get started. Also, like this video if you enjoyed the content, and subscribe so you're notified on new videos.